はい。皆さん、こんにちは。ジョーです。今日もですね、皆さんと一緒に、今このクリプトの業界で活躍している、ファウンダーの方をお呼びしてお話を聞いていくという会をやっていきたいと思います。Okay, today we're going to have Armani from Backpack, our CEO and founder. Thank you so much for coming again. I think the last interview we had was in March, and that was before our equity and also tokenized equity, Backpack security. So kind of wanted to ask about, how you're feeling about that, and also afterwards, how plans ahead. So, generally speaking, he was really well received. How are you feeling about this vibes and the current state?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty great. There's a ton of work to do, and obviously come a ton of time to necessarily reflect. I think right now what we're seeing is, the whole industry really is in a, I would say an inflection point of sorts, where, you have, a decade plus of technology and primitives that have really been preparing themselves for this moment, where a lot of the attention, went from, the original dream of DeFi to, the whole NFT mania to the meme coin mania, and now, off the back of the PerpDex mania, moving into the RWA space. And it's pretty clear too. I think a lot of people in the industry, if you wake up like 10 years from now and you ask the question, like, what is one of the dominant themes in crypto? It's really this convergence of crypto with traditional finance, as you have this, global market structure that's being built on all these blockchains, whether it's the L1s themselves like Solana or the DeFi apps. And, this is really, I think, the beginning of that transition. And so, it was pretty an apt debut to do it alongside the SpaceX IPO. That was really the first week that we released our brokerage and released the first tokenized SpaceX stock on Solana. And, I couldn't be more excited about it. The future is very bright, especially now that you have folks like Robinhood coming out with their chain. The story there is all about RWAs. All the Solana volume, just in particular on spot, is really moving towards tokenized equities. And so, you have this like incredible, wave, I think, that's coming, and we're really just starting to see the swell starting to build.
All right. And kind of wanted to understand, what was the reason behind of the success? Why do you think this was so well received by the community?
So I think there's a million little things that go into building us, right? The token is really kind of the tip of the iceberg. What we've done over the past 3 going on 4 years is we've been really building this comprehensive stack for being able to build a global financial institution, and to be able to do it on the back of blockchain technology, whether it's Solana or our exchange itself, where you have all these different layers, right? You have, the underlying blockchain infrastructure and the custodian and all the, stablecoin rails and the ability to hook up and connect to DeFi and, networks like Solana. You have the clearing and matching and settlement layer in the exchange itself. You have all the liquidity and the assets and the TVL and the global group of traders that, are starting to use the platform as a primary venue. You have things like global fiat rails and being able to on and off ramp assets in. You have the risk engine, right? Things like spot margin, borrow lending, perpetual futures, really as primitives to be able to build an ecosystem around. And you have the global licensing, right? And this is like one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, right? Really getting our ducks in a row in every region around the world, so that we can not just build a great crypto product, but so that we can apply everything that we know in crypto and blockchain technology to the context of a regulated financial institution. And so the debut of the brokerage product is really on top of all of these layers, where, now we have a brokerage like, an Interactive Brokers or a Robinhood or a Futu building on top of the stack. Where now, okay, you have all these things, and you can now build incredible user experiences, like being able to buy, Apple stock with a stablecoin. And then the next level beyond that is to take that full stack and to bring it completely on chain, where when you're able to actually build each one of these layers one by one and in a coherent and intentional fashion, then you can start building net new things that have never been built before. And I think this is one of the primary reasons why it was so well received. Where if you take a look at status quo for tokenized stocks, you have a wide spectrum of offerings, right? On one side of the spectrum, you have things like the transfer agent model, right? And this is, I think, perhaps the most pure model, perhaps the hardest model. And you have great companies like Superstate that have been, pushing the envelope on here and really kind of being, pioneers to be able to kind of bring that to market. Then if you go further along the spectrum, you have things like the DTCC model, where they even had a no action letter from the SEC. And I think people are really excited about that, just given the huge nature of just how big DTCC is, right? They have all the distribution in the world for, being the canonical settlement layer for, every Ethereum brokerage and clearing broker kind of behind the scenes. And I think people are really excited about that, especially in the context of the PAB setting, right? I think it's fair to say that that model is really going to be a huge, step function improvement to the back-end plumbing for every brokerage and, securities firm all around the world, Backpack included. But then if you go further along the spectrum, you have, other tokenized, stock products, right? And the core issue with these is, comes down to like one thing, which is the fact that they're cash settled instruments. So when you buy most tokenized stocks, you actually don't get any rights to the underlying security entitlement and really get this synthetic exposure via this wrapped assets that, basically follows the price. And it's tempting to want to settle there and to want to think that that's enough. But there's several problems with this model. So the first problem is it just doesn't feel real or legitimate. Okay, you can argue that the shares are sitting there and they're backed. But if you're telling me I buy stock on Solana and I can't actually move it into my Robinhood account or my Futu account, like, is it actually real? And I think, you can argue both sides. I think for me, the true test of whether something is real is whether I can move it into my brokerage account or into my retirement account. Because I think a lot of people really think about kind of the crypto world and the traditional finance world very differently. And beyond the legitimacy in the question, there's much more subtle issues with this model as well, where, if you can't actually move it to and from traditional finance, then you're really just stuck with crypto as this parallel financial system being built. And, I firmly believe that that's not going to be the end state for crypto, right? The two worlds are going to converge, and we're not going to think about crypto and DeFi, and we're not going to think about TradFi and traditional finance. It's just going to be digital assets and one big global financial system that, is accessible to the entire world. Right. And so if you want to bring securities trading on chain, which I think to me, it's one of the North Stars of, the whole securities effort that we're pushing. You need the assets to freely flow to and from, right? Something like being able to have a 24/7 market, not just on the weekends, but on the weekdays as well, right? That's a really hard problem to solve. It's really hard to solve because it's an asset problem, an AUM problem, right? You need millions or billions of tokenized securities actually minted and freely flowing on chain. But then actually being able to price these assets in a market is really hard because you have an external reference price, right? All the price discovery is happening on NYSE and NASDAQ and these venues. It's not happening on chain. And so how do you keep the prices in line? And how do you, ARP back and forth? And how do you actually build a deep liquid market natively on chain? And I think one of the really important ingredients to that is being able to ARP back and forth. So being able to trade between Solana and NASDAQ at the speed of a token. And so I think this is one of the primary reasons why we're actually able to get really good liquidity natively on Solana, which is, basically boils down to the fact that you can trade between Solana and NASDAQ and it looks and feels exactly like trading between Solana and Binance. It's really at the speed of a token. So market makers can arc the prices, they can keep it aligned, they can cycle inventory, they can mint more shares, they can redeem more shares. And that's like a really hard but subtle problem. And it's something that you could really only do if you have not this cash settled instruments, but actually give you a brand new tokenized security offering that actually gives you a redemption right for the underlying security entitlement. And that's like really the core thing that we did differently from every other tokenized stock product in the world. We were the first to do it.
Yeah.
Coinbase recently announced that they're doing something similar. That's so far just an announcement. This is actually live in production today. And so, that's one of the things that we're seeing a lot with the trading activity, right? You actually see people arbing these markets, especially when you're looking at AMMs. You need people to be arbing the pools to be able to keep the prices in line. And so from that, it's about liquidity. And when you get good liquidity on chain, people are more willing to do volume on chain. And then that translates directly into the weekend volumes and the weekend liquidity, the weekend trading, because the assets are already there. So you have to be able to solve all these problems at once. And on top of that, build, a beautiful user experience. Yeah, this tweet I posted out when we launched, it was like a 20-second recording of the whole end-to-end flow. You're buying on NASDAQ, you're buying MU on NASDAQ, and you would draw it to Solana, your self-custodial wallet, in the exact same way you would draw USDC or SOL. And so it's this really kind of, if I can be a little self-aggrandizing, it's really elegant experience where it feels very native to DeFi, and it feels very native to crypto. It's quite literally just deposit and withdrawal, and everything is happening behind the scenes. Right, you're buying on NASDAQ the stablecoin, you're transforming the assets upon a withdrawal into this tokenized form, you're minting it right there on Solana, and it all happens at that deposit and withdrawal boundary really automatically. And so it's a great user experience with, I think, the required primitives for good market structure, and the structuring that gives you the confidence that, this actually does give you a right to have the real asset. And so I think all those things kind of come together to create this story, and is in large part responsible for, a big reason why the product has been so well received. And I think to me, it's super clear that this is not only the first example of the true stablecoin model being applied to securities, but, it's kind of, pretty clear that after this, like, not only will this be the dominant, tokenized stock model for DeFi, but also, what happened with, the US dollar and stable coins, this is the exact same opportunity is going to apply to the whole US securities market, where, stable coins are really this export of the dollar to the world. And, I think we're going to see the exact same thing with US capital markets, really on the back of tokenized stocks.
I'm a little surprised, or I think a lot of people are very surprised that now this instant redeemability is, how Backpack is going. Not other players can do, but also T+0 settlement. That's something very unique to Backpack. Other exchanges, they sell the shares and they have to wait. Users have to wait for 24 hours to do something with that money. Why Backpack can do such innovative things and offers such solutions?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the core issue that creates that problem is the fact that when you're buying real stocks, you're not buying actually with a stablecoin, right? You're buying with cash sitting in a bank account alongside a clearing broker. And that moves at the speed of fiat. And so behind the scenes, you are using fiat to be able to buy the stocks. And that naturally has some delays, right? If it's a weekend or, you might have to wait a little longer. If it's a weekday, you still have T+1, T+2 settlement to actually get the wire in and transform it into a stable coin and into the exchange to be able to withdraw. And all the exchanges more or less work on stablecoin rails. And I mean, the way to achieve this is conceptually, I would say, pretty simple, right? You just have an optimistic stablecoin settlement layer where basically just good old-fashioned TradFi liquidity management, where you have a liquidity buffer of dollars sitting on the exchange, and to the extent you have liquidity there, you can sell immediately and get the stablecoins, and behind the scenes, the brokerage and is updating its books, and you have fiat now sitting in the bank account, and that really works optimistically. So in the event that you run out of stablecoins on the exchange, you still have that T+1, T+2 settlement. It's just like physics; you can't really get around it. But on top of that, we built this optimistic, stablecoin liquidity layer, which achieves the user experience. So, I would say 9 out of 10 times, honestly, we haven't seen it yet. You'll get the instant settlement, but there is still like a small chance that you get the T+1, T+2 settlement. You'll still get margin immediately because, we have the cash just sitting there in the bank. It's easy to loop that into the entire system. But that settlement delay always exists. You just never see it unless, there's like a huge sell-off or something like that. So, it creates a great experience and something that we're very excited about and proud of. But that's kind of how it works behind the scenes.
Right. So my next question is, I think in each region or country, they have a, smaller, different regulations and so on. But I think these type of products going to be offered globally, or we at least try to. I think Revolut was now, or is called Neobank. I think we are kind of establishing our brand as Neo Brokerage or Neo Broker. How do you think you're going to compete against traditional broker house or banks with this positioning? Is it something really competitive, you think, or still like very high hurdle you have to like get over? What do you think about that?
Yeah. So what's a neobank? The concept of a neobank is quite simple, right? You have a self-custodial wallet, and you have a cryptographic key pair, and you have access to dollars anywhere in the world. And on the back of that, you can build incredible products, right? You have lending and yield products on chain. You have access to everything in the crypto economy, Bitcoin, Solana, ETH, the whole DeFi landscape. And the concept of neo brokerage is very simple, right? We have this traditional brokerage, but what if you build a traditional brokerage from the ground up to actually make it fully accessible from anybody with a self-custodial wallet? And so that's kind of the concept, where I have, a wallet, I have my MetaMask, my Phantom, my Backpack, my Soulflare or whatever. And I can, buy and sell, tokenized stocks, at the speed of a token. And I, as a developer, as a company, right, I can build incredible user experiences, and I don't have to actually worry about, all the, crazy plumbing that goes into traditional finance. And so it really opens up like the whole product landscape for, developers and companies to build net new financial products really on crypto rails in the exact same way people are doing today with stablecoins. And so I think, really it's going to boil down to the products that people build. I don't know. I can't speak for kind of what other folks are going to build on the back of these primitives. But in the same way you saw explosive stablecoin growth because you had this huge kind of demand for US dollars. I think we're going to see the exact same thing, but with US capital markets. And you already start to see this play out when you have new products like, Altitude on, the B2B side of things where they've got this neobank, and now are exploring, tokenized securities. You have, apps like FOMO that kind of been built out on they did that big round with Union Square Ventures, that, they have these social trading experiences that are natively on blockchains. They started with meme coins, but, you open up these products, to kind of this new kind of wave of financial apps. And it just opens up the whole landscape of finance, in a way that I think, it really has never been done before, because everything's natively programmable. Everything's on chain. You can really focus at the product layer, in a way that's, I think, is really liberating for people that are trying to build net new things.
Yeah. And I know our, Backpack security tokens, SpaceX, Micron, and so on, they're basically like dominating the market in terms of liquidity. And to solidify the positioning of Backpack securities, what are the plans ahead or products upcoming? You can kind of tell us.
So I'll say one thing. So it's one thing to do it for like 4 symbols, and you get like bootstrap markets and do the tokenization, but it's a whole other thing to do it for 30,000 symbols. And ultimately, the goal is to have this entire crypto native brokerage running on chain. So that you can get access to anything that you would get access to on Robinhood. You can do it right from your DeFi app. And I think that is going to be like the next big step that we take. So it's a ton of work to get to that point, But I think that's the thing that's really driving us right now, because that is what's going to make the neo brokerage concept real for the first time, and something that I think is going to be responsible for, the next, 10x, 100x growth in the crypto, economy, so to speak.
So in the previous videos or interviews, we touched up on equity perps. Is there anything planned or anything you can talk about now?
So I think one of the key issues with equity perps right now boils down to funding rates. Right? Funding rates are expensive with equity perps. And a big reason for that is because you don't have a spot instrument to hedge on. And so we very intentionally went with spot first because we want to be able to solve that problem. And it takes a lot of work to build out a proper brokerage and to be able to actually get, spot assets going at scale. And so I think for the first step to equity perps is really getting the spot assets out. And now that we've kind of got that going, we'll be opening up weekend order books, we'll have collateral, spot margin, borrow lending, and importantly, perpetual futures on, equity perps, commodities, the whole shebang. And, once you have all these things portfolio margin together, then you can start, doing things like, opening up the basis trade and being able to, art funding rates and being able to express much more kind of diverse kind of strategies to be able to actually keep the markets in line. And so it's something that's pretty subtle. It's not something that I think most retail traders are actively thinking about, but it's a really important nuance of the market structure that more kind of, advanced institutional traders care a lot about, because there's market making and profitable opportunities there. But importantly, it's what actually one of the inputs actually, emerges into like a good market, right? Ultimately, you don't want to be paying a bunch of dollars in funding every hour to be able to long or short a symbol. And so the RWA Perps are coming, very soon. That's us being tested right now in development, and hopefully will be coming out into production over the next couple of weeks.
We're going to take, or Backpack is going to take the cash equity, US equities as a collateral soon as well.
So so equities will be usable as collateral. That's correct. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so you'll be able to do things like, buy NVIDIA and borrow dollars and be able to, withdraw from the exchange to go using DeFi or, pay for a dinner or something.
Very exciting. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Armani, for your time. I think I want to have more questions about other products that I'll take it to the next video.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Joe.
Thank you.